And welcome to part 3 of rating the monsters from Monster Hunter World. If you haven't seen part 1 or 2, please watch those first. Otherwise, the only thing you need to know is that we're doing a personal opinion piece rating all the monsters from the game on a scale of 1 to 10. And first up for part 3 we have Lunestra. One of my favorites, but only because I liked farming for her armor. I can't really put her too far above the regular Testra. She's definitely got a little bit more bite, and they're both monsters that can kill you without hesitation, but I don't think she jumps significantly far enough to give her any more than the 7 out of 10 that I gave Testra. Next is the Elder Dragon Kushala Deora. A lot of people don't like Kushala that much. I think that, Kushala has a lot of wind, and that can make for a very cinematic fight, but outside of it, like avoiding all the tornadoes, which, there's a lot. There's so much wind in the fight, but if you get the awareness to avoid those, Kushala is actually pretty easy. I would actually say that Kushala is one of the easiest dragons in the game, and I'm just gonna give it a 7 because it does have some difficulty curve, but overall it's one of my least favorite dragons. After that we have Valhazak, and it might be, one of my top 3, if not top 5. I love this monster. It is a fucking zombie dragon, and it looks the part. The mechanics of the fight reflect that. Fantastic monster with fantastic weapons and armor. 9 out of 10. There's Colovay. I'm probably not getting that name pronunciation right. I love this monster and I hate this monster. It was introduced as like the first big raid siege monster that you fought over and over again for a few parts. I think it looks cool, like in all forms. It starts as this big gilded gold monstrosity, and then you melt it away, and it still looks really cool even when it gets smaller in a different kind of way. But what really makes it stand out to me is that the final den with the melted gold and the lava, like that might be one of the coolest arenas and coolest like cinematic fights in the game. I hated Colovay just because of how much I farmed her back in the day when she was first introduced, looking for one of her gems, and it actually turned me off of the game for a while, just because I was burnt out. But I can't hold it against Colovay. I'm gonna give Colovay a 8 out of 10. And then we get Zeno Jiva, who is, for all intents and purposes, the final boss of the vanilla game in Monster Hunter World. And I think Zeno Jiva really looks cool, but nothing about their fight actually feels like a final boss. Zeno Jiva just strikes me as kind of a damage sponge. It's very, very easy. It just takes a long time because of how much HP they have. So I think it's very much for me it's a very boring fight. Visuals aside, I think I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Now we're finally in Iceborne, and the first monster that you encounter in Iceborne is Beatotis. Basically like this ice shark thing. I kind of feel like Beatotis is kind of a weak introduction to the Iceborne expansion. Not really memorable, not really a visual fight, nothing hardcore mechanic that makes it stand out. Even though it is the introduction, I can't really feel like I should give it any sympathy points here. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. And next we got Bambero, who I feel I consider, you know, he is the real introduction to Iceborne. He was the monster that I was most interested in fighting getting into the game, so I was really glad that he came so early. I do wish they'd done something with him later to make him a more challenging monster later on, but I do love his design, and I love the mechanic of, you know, he scoops up this tree or rock and just flings it at you, right? So he's a very visually creative monster. Unfortunately, the fight itself doesn't really stand out in terms of like it's not any more fun. It's kind of like a standard hunt, so he doesn't like leap up above the other monsters in that regard. So with that in mind, I can only give him a 7 out of 10. Then we get into Viper Tobi-Kadachi, who takes everything that I like about Tobi-Kadachi and amps it up. He's really cool, he's really fun, he's fast, an enjoyable fight, doesn't really break into the really, really good category, so I'm going to give him a 7. Same for Nightshade Palumo. Actually, no, I think I'll give Nightshade Palumo an 8, just because I do love Palumos. You know, he's a bat. They do add the gimmick of instead of just regular wind, he can put you to sleep, and I do like status effect fights. They're a little bit more fun to me, so I will give Nightshade Palumo a slightly bit better rating for an 8. But that is entirely my personal bias speaking right there. Next you get Coralphuket, who is essentially a lot like regular Puke, except he has, I believe, more poison to his attacks than the regular one. He also, he seems to do really, really high damage, so he can be, especially since he's so early into the Iceborne expansion, he can be very much a challenging fight early on. But he really does, I'm going to judge him based on the fact that he doesn't do too much different, even attack pattern wise, from the regular Puke, so I'll give him a 7. Same as Barryoff, I'm going to give Barryoff a 7 as well, because Barryoff is a very cool looking monster, a fairly decent attack pattern, but he just doesn't have enough bite or anything that really makes him stand out in the grand scheme of things, so that'll be a 7. And I think the same for Nargha Kuga. I think Nargha Kuga is a really, really cool looking monster. He's like this wolf bat thing. So visually, I want to say Nargha Kuga for me is a solid 8 or a 9, but in terms of fight, I'm just going to give him a 7 overall, because nothing about him really makes him jump out above that 7 range for me. You get Glavinous, who honestly is probably, in my opinion, one of the best designed monsters in the game. He is so freaking cool. I mean, you think about it, it seems kind of simple, but so bizarre. He's a T-Rex with a freaking sword for a tail, and he'll bite that sword and charge it up and use it in a very interesting attack pattern. I loved him in other Monster Hunter games. He wasn't quite as challenging in this one, but he's still Glavinous. He still looks cool. The fight is still awesome. 8 out of 10 for me. Next we have Tigrex, and for me, Tigrex was the welcome to Iceborne monster. He was so damaging that was the time where it's like, okay, I have to start building my build to get better at this game. Later on, he's not quite as difficult anymore. You can definitely learn how to fight him effectively, and he becomes a little bit of a pushover. but he still looks cool. The fight is fun. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 just because he's an enjoyable monster. After that, we have Brackadios, who I think is a really cool design character or monster. I like the slime that explodes and how it kind of secretes from his arms and body. But he was overall a little tame, a little bit weak. So I'm going to give him a 6, just because the fight wasn't really all that much to talk about. Shrieking Leguiana, on the other hand, was actually like a fair bit difficult, or more difficult than regular Leguiana. A lot more ice. I felt like Shrieking Leguiana seemed important in the story when it came up for a bit. Was kind of a cool reminder that deviants can be a lot more stronger than the regular monster that they are related to. I'm gonna give Shrieking Leguiana a 7, but it's a generous 7 for Shrieking Leguiana. And next is Full Gore Anjanath, who kind of looks cool because it has like a slight transformation when it gets enraged, and it has a lot more thunder than regular Anjanath. But I didn't really think too much of the monster. It wasn't really that difficult. It was just kind of there. I'll give it a 6 because it didn't really seem like a necessary monster to the game to me. And then you get Acidic Glavinous, who I love regular Glavinous, but I wish this one had been more of a significant step up in terms of power and difficulty, because it really just actually felt like it was weaker than regular Glavinous in some ways. So I might give this one actually a negative penalty for that, and say it's sort of a 6 out of 10, just because it was disappointing in the regard that it wasn't like significantly stronger or more difficult than regular Glavinous. And for the final 2 monsters in our video, we've got Ebony Odogaran, who, takes regular Odogaran and reminds you that it can still be difficult. Like, it brings back that difficulty of the early Odogaran fight. And I find Ebony Odogaran like one of the more annoying monsters to deal with, just in terms of his attack pattern and how he can like really hurt you. It's not a bad thing though. Like it's an appropriately difficult fight, and I find it enjoyable. I don't find it fun, like super fun. Like, I don't go out and be like, oh man, I can't wait to hunt Ebony Odogaran. So I'll give him a 7. And then we end here on Velcana, who is sort of like the poster dragon of the Iceborne expansion. A really cool dragon, ice dragon, very damaging, pretty good fight, looks really cool. They've even brought it back for Arc-Tempered Velcana, who I have only fought once, but I really like Velcana. I think Velcana is one of the better dragons in the game. I'll give Velcana an 8 out of 10. And here we're ending part 3. The next parts and final parts will be coming soon. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Stay tuned for more videos.